Hello and welcome to the Inquisitorial archive. My name is Kevin O'Rourke and today I'll be reviewing Rogue Trader. Rogue Trader is published by Fantasy Flight Games. It's been out for quite a few years now at this stage. It's got quite a few supplements, but today I'll just try and refer just to the core book. For the RPG, they've previously done Dark Heresy. I did a review on that previously, if you want to go back on that. It's once more set in Warhammer 40,000. The system is based on it. There are a few changes, most notably psychic powers, as well as some new elements which weren't needed for Dark Heresy. For example, they dispose of thrones, which was the currency in Dark Heresy. Instead, you have a profit factor, which is just the sheer quantity of money you're talking about in Rogue Trader. If you're trying to do it in drones, I'm not sure how well it would work out. I think I've heard some people talking about trying to work out with just Rogue Trader, but just with using drones. But I don't know if anyone's ever done it successfully. It's an abstract means to an end. It works out. It's your general area of wealth. In the game, you're playing the command crew of a Rogue Trader vessel, Rogue Traders are nobility who are given a special item called a Warrant of Trade, or their ancestors were and they've inherited it. The Warrant of Trade may have certain restrictions on it, which they do talk about in the book and can be quite interesting. For example, sometimes if a Rogue Trader wants to claim a world, he has to be the first settlement, which ensures the Rogue Trader must always be in the vanguard of the battle and always be attacking the enemy. Well, so to speak, he must always be at the forefront, which is a good way of excusing why your Rogue Trader is constantly going into the dangerous situations himself. Or you could just have, well, he's rich and bored and he wants to do it because it's exciting and interesting. He fancies himself quite a swashbuckling, daring hero. They change character creation compared to Dark Heresy in that you have a life path. And you can choose along this path and make choices like what homeworld you were on, what kind of circumstance you're on. So you could pick the background of being noble-born, or you could pick to be from a forge world, or a hive world, or a death world. All these are in the 40k background, various ones. Obviously, there's not really many worlds that are just noble-born worlds. I can't think of any at all, but it's represented well. You might have been born in an imperial world or some other type of world, but you were raised amongst nobility. You are noble. This has certain benefits and penalties. You're better talking to people, you get bonuses in formal situations particularly. You go through the life paths, which can be quite fun, although people can take advantage of these sometimes to power up certain stats. And then at the end of it, you can pick your motivation and you can pick your career. The motivations, they work out pretty well, although some of them, this one gives you a fate point, and this one gives you a wound. A fate point to wound really doesn't balance out, so that's a bit of a, I don't know, but it's meant to be your motivation. You're supposed to pick for in-character reasons, although I've rarely seen people pick the endurance, which gives you one fate point. The classes you can take are the Rogue Trader, obviously, who is a quite good in close combat, quite a good social character. It's the default person that, you know, somebody should be playing a Rogue Trader, and this is what they present as a class, although I know a lot of people who have done house rules, including myself, where you don't, because not everyone wants to play a social close combat guy for the Rogue Trader. They have a different idea in mind. So a lot of people go, well, you could play a Seneskull or an Archmilitant, but as long as everyone's happy with it, you can just be the Rogue. You can be the Rogue Trader. In game, you're the Rogue Trader. You're just not playing the class. And the Rogue Trader works out pretty well, quite good in close combat, quite good in bleed. They can be quite good at different lores, not as good as the first two things. They're not that tough. You have to have a drawback somewhere. You've got Archmilitants, who are supposed to be these really scary combat guys, and women. Actually, I think there's a picture of a woman for it. It works out pretty well. You can specialise in heavy weapons, melee weapons, basic weapons, pistol weapons. And yeah, it works out pretty well. It does have some flaws. Actually, I'll show you some of the pictures of characters going through, because the art actually is quite good. In Dark Heresy, the vast majority of the art was recycled art from Warhammer 40,000's various game lines. This is the Inquisitor. Okay. Sorry, not the Inquisitor, the Rogue Trader. It's me talking about Dark Heresy again, me confused. But as I said, he's pretty good. You've got the Arch Militant. Here she is with her bolt gun. The Arch Militant is primarily focused towards ranged. It's actually a problem because you're supposed to talk about, oh yeah, they're supposed to be good at you know, they're good, they're able to use any weapon they can pick up. And first, they start off with some really nice weapons. These are guys who are supposed to be, they're the one in 1,000 soldiers. Not necessarily soldiers in their background, but they could have been. They're supposed to be, these guys are just the extreme. They're good at it. They start off with some nice gear. They're more focused towards range, so you can do close combat with them. Theirs they fall down on are their intelligence and perception. You're supposed to be able to command armies with them. You don't get command till later on unless you picked up something in your life part, which will make it an option. The area where I think this class falls down a bit is melee. You can make a melee focused Arch Militant, and you do their special ability, which gives you a all the classes have a special ability. You can their special ability can apply to a melee weapon. You choose what type of weapon group you want to apply to. The problem is that you don't get many of the melee talents till much further down. Like it's, I'll just check here to be accurate. You get counterattack, which is a very, very nice melee ability at rank 8. Swift attack. When do you get swift attack? Your God, let's actually try to find. I think, yeah, it's rank 8 as well. That's the last rank of the game. They don't have a rank 9. They go up as far as rank 8. Compared to some of the other game lines, and compared to other characters, Rogue Trader can pick up their swift attack a lot quicker. He's meant to be good at close combat. I suspect they didn't want to overlap with Rogue Trader too much. You can remedy this to a degree by going with a Chem Gland Warrior from Into the Storm book, but they focused a bit much, for my taste, on melee. You have the Astropath Transcendent. Oh. The Astropath Transcendent, who is a psyker. As I mentioned, Dark Heresy is like they were brought into black ships to Terra, and then they were soul bound to the Emperor, so their eyes are usually hollow. They've lost their sense of sight more than likely, or they're going to. If they're very lucky, they haven't quite lost it just yet. They just need incredibly thick glasses, but they're meant to be really rare. They're not so good at the conventional forms of combat. However, they can be quite good at lores, and they start with a Siren, and they're psychers. They're the only psychers that you'll normally get going into core book unless somebody becomes a mutant and mutates. That is a threat, unfortunately, in all of the Warhammer 40,000 RPG lines, that you could mutate due to being exposed to too much and gain too much corruption points, being exposed to warp and radiation of things. They could all give you, just destabilize your genes or have malefic influences on you. The Astropaths, I'll be honest, I'll talk about them later. The Explorator, it's like the tech priest from Dark Heresy. They're the guys who've the monopoly on how technology works. They have the monopoly on the technical know-how. Quite nice gear. They can be pretty good in combat. They can be insanely tough. They can buy an ability called the Flesh is Weak, which means they're slowly replacing their body with various small bionic parts, and that just increases their armor. That's a mechanical effect, plus a few other nice mechanical effects. The Explorator as well is in a position, because they're an Explorator, not a regular tech priest. They're given the authority to go out beyond the bonds of the Imperium, like the Rogue Trader, but the Rogue Trader is there to conquer and expand the Imperium's borders and identify threats. They're there to recover ancient lost knowledge and archaeotech. The Missionary is, well, a missionary, and they're supposed to be spreading the Imperial creed. You're a bit more tolerant, well, cunningly tolerant, and that's not the best way to phrase it, but I think that kind of gets it. You're able to be tolerant with those who don't understand Imperial creed. You've got special training for this, as opposed to some other members of the Ecclesiarchy, the religion of the Imperium, who might just want to set the entire village on fire. You understand, they haven't been exposed to it, or they may have what is regarded as a deviant fate. So you're able to play the long game, and they are quite good social characters and can be quite good in melee. They are terrible at ranged, but you can start off with like a chainsword and a flamer, which is can be quite vicious, as well as that their special ability, all the classes get a special ability, I'm not going to mention them all, but they get an ability called Pure of Fate, which you can gain talents for, which you're a holy man, you can perform minor miracles. It's pretty cool. There's the navigator, the guys who are able to navigate the ships through the warp. Having a PC navigator just makes things a lot safer. They're not the best in close combat. They can be okay at range. They're mostly good at, well, navigating through the warp, but they pick up a few lores about psychers and other navigators in the warp and things as time goes by, which can be quite useful. As well as this, they're small. They're different navigator houses, which they talk about in the book, which you get additional options being a navigator. Which navigator house are you part of, or which type of navigator house, at least initially in just this book. And it works out pretty well. For navigators, you don't roll in the same mutation table as other people because they're genes on the table. You're going to get mutations as a navigator more likely. There's the senescal or shenical. I'm not sure which is the correct pronunciation. The first rotator character I played one of these. It's referred to as space accountants. Is a good way to refer to them. They're the bursars, the guys who do all the accounts for the rogue trader. More than likely they help with the commerce. They're wheelers and dealers. They're a very good way to go at it. I very much focused on the commerce side of it. However, others can focus on the spy master approach. When I was playing one, I really liked the commerce approach and being able to get us geared at our commerce as that our profit factor alone shouldn't have been able to get us. You can really artificially buff it for some roles if you focus on it with a not just a science skill, but they're particularly good at it. The rogue trader as well, that's a commerce skill, and other people can pick it up. The void master is like the last class. It's 4 classes in one. It works out pretty well. You've got the Master of Augurs, who you get free rerolls for doing scans with the ship's sensors, or augurs. You've got the Master of Ordnance, who gets free rerolls for shooting the guns if you miss. As someone pointed out, the problem is at higher levels you get so many modifiers that it's only rerolls if you fail. You get so many modifiers that you don't fail, so you don't get used to your special ability if one of the other crew just fired. You should have above average stats for it anyway, so check out. They also have the basically, I can't remember what the name of it is, Master of Piloting or something like that, or Master of Large Craft, and they're really good at piloting the ship. They're which sometimes is a godsend, because sometimes you just end up with horrible penalties. Other people can try and do this, but they get free rerolls when they fail. And lastly, there's the Master of Small Craft, who's quite good at piloting as well. Doesn't get free rerolls for the large vessel, however he does get free rerolls for small vessels like Thunderhawks and Aquila Landers. These are your small little shuttles, they get free rolls for them, or fighters. But it's for the piloting tests. And unless you're doing a lot of vehicle combat, which is introduced in a different book, it's not going to work out. Much later on, they're bringing out the rules for actual attack craft attacking, and it just... One of the players in my games tried to play one night, the house rule a lot, and even then I let him get the reroll for command test, because you're leading squadrons of guys when they start using attack craft. The player was somewhat dissatisfied with the class. It's like, just play a Master Large Craft and jump in the shuttle. The re-rolling pilot test, unless you're doing a lot of vehicle combat, doesn't work out. The equipment section is a lot more broad than the Dark Heresy one. It's a lot. You've got a lot of interesting equipment, because the money you have is ridiculous in Rogue Trader. You're going out beyond the bounds of the Imperium. You can deal with Xenos however you want. You've basically got a license to do almost anything you want. You can lose this in a few ways, as they detail in the book, but that's pretty rare in a big upset. You've got a lot of you've got some political power as well, so even stuff that you shouldn't technically be allowed to do, you can usually get away with a lot less repercussions than normally be there. They change how cycles work in this compared to Dark Heresy. In this, you roll your willpower, plus you get an additional 5 onto this for every psi rating you're using. So let's say you've got a psi rating of 4 and you've got a willpower of 50, which, seeing as this is your main stat, it's going to probably get to 50 pretty quick and probably get beyond. So that's a 70. You have a 70% chance of succeeding. Compared to some of the other stuff, that's a really high chance. Later on they ratted in a 91 to 100 will always fail, because very quickly people were gearing their characters and buying their willpower advances because it was quite cheap for them, being Astropath Transcendence. They were automatically exceeding a lot of time once you got to higher levels. That's a bit of a problem, especially when you get to doing opposed willpower checks, because they're getting this big bonus to their psi rating, and they have a high, from their psi rating, they're getting a big bonus to willpower when they're trying to affect somebody else. They're getting that big bonus. Plus, they probably have a quite high willpower themselves, and the other guy's standing there like, I don't really have much that'll give you defense. You can get a few abilities that can give you a bonus defense, but once you get to high level, if the Asprac goes, I'm using this ability on him, unless the guy's immune, they're probably in an awful lot of trouble. And it's very easily abusable. In one of the games, one of my players just constantly kept mind probing people. Got quite upset when he mind probed a Chaos Reaver, and he got some insanity and corruption points. He was not happy with that. But I was like, well, you mind probed someone who's in league with the Dark Gods themselves, and properly in league. He's not a lip service kind of guy, so he didn't like that. As well as this, you have the problem of you can do fettered, unfettered, or pushing. It's not a problem. I see they want to make it a bit less risky in some respects, but at higher levels it's becoming a big problem. If you do it with your Psychic Power fettered, using half your psi rating, but there's no Perils of the Warp or Psychic Phenomenon, which is the big risk. So, okay, you're halving your abilities. It's like, okay, fair enough. Not so much a big thing at low levels. However, I've heard some players, and I kind of agree with them, it's like, it makes things too safe. Psychers aren't meant to be safe for more than 4,000 in my opinion. And some people agree with this. Some people are like, no, it's fine. Look, fair enough. Then you do it unfettered, which is basically you just have your psi rating. Or you can push, which is pushing. Unfettered, you have a chance of getting your, if you roll doubles on the D100, you have a chance of, getting Perils of the Warp. Which is like, okay, fair enough. As well as this, you end up with pushing, which can give you an additional 3 psi rating on top, but you're automatically going to get a Perils of the Warp. I'm not so much a problem with pushing, because you're definitely having a drawback. Another bit of the problem for the psychic abilities is you get to have, how can I phrase this? When you're sustaining powers, when you're trying to do multiple psychic powers, you're using a psychic power to pin this guy in place over here with telekinesis, and then you want to do a telepathy power to mind control this guy. Sustaining powers, you take 1 from your effective psi rating. But at high levels, you've got a psi rating of 9. I'm sustaining these 2 powers, so that means your effective psi rating is 7. You're still ridiculously powerful, so you can actually just start sustaining lots of psychic powers. I've seen people like telekinetic shields, so they get a bonus to their armor and things. I find they're too powerful, particularly when you bring some of the supplements. But that's my opinion. You might disagree. Check it out. Definitely have a look at it before you go change anything. They have errated some different stuff for it. You get your starships. The starship combat can be quite long. Everyone gets to do something though. That's the benefit. Everyone should be able to do something, unless you have a very large group or somebody isn't trying to specialize in particular. Even if your class isn't good at something, you can try and do something. I was in a game where one of the characters left who had previously been doing the piloting, and then I went, well, I'm going to get piloting as Elite Advanced. Asked the GM, and he'd let me get it for healthy enough, but quite expensive enough cost. And I started doing the piloting ship combat for our ship. Later on, a pilot came in, so I started doing command tests. You know, I started picking up the command skills. So I was like, okay, fair enough. You can bounce around. Some of the classes are like the engine, the explorator can just start messing around with the sensors or something to boost them. Somebody else can do scanning. It works out pretty well. They start expanding what some of the classes can do in later on books. You have to design your ship as well as you roll a chart in the main book, and you get so many ship points and so much profit factor. Any ship points you haven't used up, be like making your ship, you get towards profit factor. There's your starting profit factor. Everyone gets a starting piece of equipment that they can choose within certain restrictions, alongside the quite generous equipment you get in the main book, so according to your class. Building the ships can be a lot of fun, especially trying to aspire towards a large ship. How you make more profit factor, some of the goals of the game are to use a system of endeavours. Where the GM says, if you complete the endeavour, you get, say, 5 profit factor, but you need 1,000 achievement points. and he says, well, you have to do these definite things, or they might not tell you because it's not immediately clear what you have to do, but you have to accumulate that total. You need components that give you bonus achievement points. I know of games where the GM has entirely gone, you know, I don't want to deal with that stuff, I'm just going to give the players profit factor 10 points. It's worked a bit for them. The problem is the components that give you achievements, why do they have them on their chip? There's role-playing reasons, but sometimes like, well, we could just have this really awesome thing here that's also good for role-playing, but also gives us a mechanical effect. So you just have kind of balance it out there. I stick with this system, but it's very easy if you design the ship if you really focus the ship towards making money, you can just power up and get ridiculous amounts of money. I think I ran one game, the players did a small endeavor which was supposed to get them 2 profit factor. They got a bonus, I think they got 15 because they got bonus 13 profit factor. If you try, it's not that hard to break it. It's not. So you can remember this with various house rules, or just kind of go to players like, lads, it's not bothered. But sometimes people really like having the extended cargo vaults, which don't give you profit factor, but having the temple shrine to the god emperor, and the you know, cargo hold and lighter bay and things. The ship combat can take a while. It's a bit more like naval. Like sort of Napoleonic. You mentioned that naval ships going around very slowly. Your macro cannons instead of regular cannons. It's fun. It can take a long time. It's not suited to have having very large groups of ships, but it works out. It's kind of a bit tilted towards having one really good ship, which is what the players have, and then they've got a couple of bad guys and you can blow them up who aren't going to be as skilled. There's a sample adventure in the back, as with most of Warhammer 40,000 RPG books. Quite a good introductory one for a new group. Yeah, it works out pretty well. Plus, you can give them a few shiny things to plunder and loot, as well as build up their infamy that they've recovered this ancient haul of treasure. The monster section in the book is pretty good. I have to say it's. I definitely have a higher opinion of the Dark Heresy section, although the Dark Heresy has quite good stats for like criminals, things like that. But you've got pirate captain stats, and this obviously been forward. Orc freebooters who were aliens, but they're, you know, pirates themselves. Elder Corsairs, you can sense a pirate team really coming in here. It's in the Crone's Expanse, which is a largely unexplored area of space. Some of the areas closer to Imperial space are explored to a point. However, this is the wild frontier. That's kind of the appeal of the game. Of course, you can make up your own setting. But I have to admit, even if it stands, even with the gripes I have, this is a very fun game. It's quite good fun. Worth picking up, whatever. Maybe you want to do stuff, but the setting, the ideas, works out quite well. It has its flaws, I have to admit. But I've had a hell of a lot of fun with it. And if you decide to pick up a copy, or decide to get into a game of it yourself, I hope you have fun, as much fun as I've had. As you can see, the book is awfully... This hasn't been mistreating it. I've just played and run in that many games that the book is starting to really wear around the edges. It's far too many games being passed around between players, and just general use. Maybe I should have been a bit more careful with the players passing around, and myself, my own abuse, which has been left up on the tables and various things and pile up as we're fighting giant space battles. But hey, it's fun. That's what it's there for. And I can always pick up a new copy despite the issues of this one. It still services me quite well. Anyway, I hope you found this informative. Once more, thanks for visiting for the Inquisitorial archive, and I hope you've had fun. Goodbye.